Great.
So it is now noon, so I'm going to do our official welcome and we'll get started, folks.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Thank
What
you
are we
all.
talking? What are we talking about? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I just wanted to see your head explode, Grant.
Anyway. All right, everybody, welcome to today for this session, Sportscasting with Dave Caldwell and Curt Sandoval. I'm going to start with a little introduction with Dave. Dave Caldwell is a play-by-play sportscaster with Fox Sports West and ESPN. He has been nominated for an Emmy Award and won Southern California Sports Broadcasters Award. He has called over 1,200 games in the last 24 years. Welcome, Dave Caldwell.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Dave. And then on to Curt Sandoval. Curt Sandoval is a 7-time Emmy winner as a sports anchor and reporter with KABC in Los Angeles. He has been with the station for nearly 20 years. Before that, he was a sports anchor and reporter in San Diego. Dave and Curt, thank you so much for joining us, and I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to let Dave go first. Let me just start by saying I appreciate all the students coming on, and I just really mean this from the bottom of my heart. You know, I respect your time. Your time is valuable, and this is really about you, not us. We're here to be stewards of what you want, and there's no such thing as a bad question. It's just a question. So make sure whatever deep in your heart and soul, we answer. And with that, I'll let my good friend and colleague, Dave Caldwell, start first.
Thank you, Curt. I echo everything that you're saying there. You know, we're both, Curt and I are on the same page when it comes to that. This is really going to be about, for you guys, everything that you need. We want to be able to be here for you. I'm the play-by-play side of this, as Curt is the anchor side of the sports world. So our roles are similar, but they are different. Curt we're both of us are in essence storytellers, but for me, covering a live event, a game, no matter what the sport is, there's always drama that is on the field or on the court. That's the way I look at it. And with every good story, there is drama. Curt and I have done these before, and so I always like to be able to tell you that when it comes to a game and drama, the definition of drama is two opposing forces that want the same thing. And so when you look at a game, basketball, football, doesn't matter. You have two teams, and what do they both want? They want to win. They want victory. So it's how the story then unfolds before us, and that's what gives us the drama. And when is it? When it's a great game, when it's a really exciting game, it's when it's down to the end of the game and it's really close and you don't know where it's going to go. You always tend to get to the edge of your seat. So for me, I love every single time that I get a chance to go call a game, because you just never know what you're going to get in front of you. Another thing that I like to talk about when it comes to play-by-play is that in so many ways, play-by-play is like an iceberg. Now, when you think about an iceberg, they traditionally tell you, you see the top 10% of the iceberg that's above the surface. 90% of the iceberg is below the surface. So how is that? What's that comparison like? When it comes to doing play-by-play, 90% of my work is the research. It's before the game. It's the preparation. The more prepared you can be, then when that event unfolds in front of us, the drama that plays out, then you can enhance the experience of your viewers or your listeners by being prepared and giving them additional information that will help put in perspective what we're seeing. Those are kind of the big things that I really wanted to be able to impart with you. I think as we continue on for this next 50 minutes to an hour, however long we have, don't worry, we'll fill it. Curt and I, we know how to fill it. So I'm sure there's going to be more things that we'll be able to unfold. So Curt, with that, let me throw it back over to you as being a sports anchor.
Thank you, Dave. And I'm going to pick it up right exactly where Dave said, the iceberg and storytelling. Very similar. What I always like, I teach one day a week at Masters University, a small Christian college here in Southern California. And I always tell them on day one of class, know your audience. So I'm going to assume my audience today is interested in sports. So what I'm also going to tell you is for you to know your audience, let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm 56 years old, and I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. I went to a school right in the middle of Denver called Metropolitan State University. From there, I always wanted to go in local television. Now, I graduated in the late 80s. So in that time, I know this might surprise you, but there was no such thing as the internet or the iPhone. Completely a different time. And both Dave and I walked uphill in the snow to school both ways. Okay, so all kidding aside, I knew I wanted to go into local television. My first job was in Grand Junction, stayed there for 6 months. My second job was in Colorado Springs, stayed there 3 years. Then I went to an off-air position because I was only making $14,000 a year in Colorado Springs for 3 years. So I almost doubled my salary, and I made $26,000 a year in the late 80s, early 90s in Denver as a sports producer. Realized this wasn't the destiny the good Lord had chosen for me. I wanted to go back on air. Got a job in Bakersfield, California. If you've never been to Bakersfield, California, I can sum it up with this: armpit of California. I was then blessed to go to San Diego. I went to San Diego for a couple of years, went back to Denver, went back to San Diego, and then came to Los Angeles. So yes, I moved a lot in my first 7 to 10 years in the industry. Once I came to KABC, I struck gold, not just in terms of a nice financial increase, but much more important, and I really mean this, than the money, was the opportunity to cover big time sports: Lakers, Dodgers, Clippers, Angels winning the World Series. My first day here was the day Phil Jackson started as the head coach. So I've now been here. I started in 1999. So this summer, it'll be 22 years. And and as much as it's evolved in terms of digital television, you guys, I now shoot over 50% of my stories. I edit 90% of my stories. I am the weekend sports anchor. So what does that mean? I story tell. I just finished the weekend. We do a 4 o'clock show, a 5 o'clock show, a 6 o'clock show, a 7 o'clock show, and an 11 o'clock show. And I only get 2.5 to 3 minutes on each one of those shows. It's exactly what Dave said. It's the tip of the iceberg. I start working on the weekends, usually around 2 o'clock. And I don't finish until on Saturday nights. I don't finish till midnight. Just write, rewrite, give them new content, give them what they don't know. Always think about, the audience can get the score on their phone. The audience can get the score on the app. The audience watch the game. Give them what they don't know. The highlight, and I love anchoring, make no mistake about it. This week, the PGA Tour comes to Riviera. It will be one of the best weeks of the year for me, getting to cover golf and storytell. It's not about doing the highlights. There's a young man, Kevin Na, is from Southern California. We're going to do a feature story on him. There's another man named Max Homa. He finished 7th at Pebble Beach. He is from where I live in Southern California. He's only won once on the PGA Tour, but he's playing real well. Do a story on him. Give them what they don't know. And so that's, in essence, a little bit of what I do and what I enjoy to do. So, Dave, cross court, back to you.
And I'm going to pick it up where you talked about give them what they don't know. When you do play-by-play, what you don't want to do is, let's say it's a football game, running back gets the ball and he gains 4 yards. You don't want to say running back, insert name here, gets the ball and he runs for 4 yards, 2nd down and 6. That's already known. The viewer or the listener, if you're doing it on radio, they already know that because they can see it. The viewer can see that he got 4 yards, but give them what they don't know. Where do you go beyond that to help put things in context? And that's something that both of us have just been talking about. is to go beyond, because this is not about me. It's not about Curt. It's about what we're covering. That is the star. That is the star. And if you can do it as much justice as possible in telling their story, then you are going beyond what would possibly even be expected of you to be able to do. Let me go into a little bit about how I got into this business and how I got into doing this. Like Curt, I spent time in Colorado, lived in Littleton, Colorado for a time before going back east outside of New York City. My dad was transferred when I was 16. 2 years later, after graduating high school, went back to Colorado State, the best college in Colorado.
Not.
Got to do that every chance I get. My intention initially was to be behind the scenes. I love the idea of being a producer. I wanted to be the guy working Monday Night Football. I was blessed to get an opportunity to do that for a brief time, long time ago. But I wanted to be a producer. I wanted to be the one that would be bringing this to everybody. When I came, and Curt and I only live a few miles away from each other. We're in the same town here in Southern California. When I created a production company in the late 90s, in order to be able to start producing games, high school, college games here on the West Coast, I could not find a play-by-play person. I knew what needed to be done, so I just stepped in and did the role, just as a time filler. Lo and behold, guess what? That turned out to be pretty good. And I was immediately getting accolades from those in the industry who were covering sports, whether it's newspaper guys like Curt on television, radio, whatever it might have been, was immediately getting some accolades. And so I was able to move into this play-by-play thing really by accident. But the point is that I understood sports production. That was extremely important because I knew what needed to be done in order to get the job done. Curt mentioned that when he first got into the business and he was a reporter, he was the guy in front of the camera. There was a cameraman that was with him. That cameraman probably did the editing as well. Curt did the writing, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit, how important writing is. And he was the one in front of the camera, giving the personality and being able to speak his own words. Those things are critical when no matter what you're doing, but you have to understand how the whole process works. And Curt just mentioned that for his job now, it is now evolved. The multimedia journalist is becoming the job coming out of college. And when you get your first job, he was in Grand Junction and Colorado Springs. Those kinds of things are going to happen, and you have to know how to shoot, use a camera, edit. Don't forget sound. Sound is critically important because if you don't know it, it's like flying a bad airplane. You immediately blame the pilot and you go, what the heck is going on here? So sound is critical as well. Understand production, because once you understand all the steps that need to be done in order to tell the story right, then you can fill into any of those particular roles. And so that's really what happened with me in 1997. I just stepped in because a role needed to be filled, and it opened up a whole new set of doors for me to get an opportunity to call, as Grant was mentioning, Fox Sports West, ESPN, so many different games, so many different levels from high school to the pros. It's really opened up a whole new world. But I also knew, again, what was important to be able to be done. And we talk about that iceberg, that 90% under the surface. I can't emphasize that enough, that is so critical to be able to do the work. I had an opportunity to do a little thing with Vin Scully several years ago. And one of the things that, at this point, he was in his 80s. He was already legendary in the Hall of Fame. We all know his whole story. But he gets to the ballpark at least 3 hours before game time because he wants to prepare. He wants to get ready. And even when he's in his 80s and he was doing that, he could not emphasize that enough. Prepare, prepare, prepare. The better prepared you are, the better your broadcast will be. Whether you're telling the stories like Curt is or telling the stories like I do, you need to be as well prepared. One last thing, then I'm going to knock it back over to your side of the court. As a play-by-play guy, I always get a chance to work with an analyst. The analyst is usually someone who is in the sport, whatever sport it is, someone who either played it, coached it, all of the above. But the analyst, back when Curt and I were first getting our teeth wet in this industry, is also known as the color analyst. And you have to understand why that person was given that title of color analyst. It's because I, as the play-by-play guy, I'm the black and white. So what is the black and white versus the color? The black and white is the who, what, when, and where. All the things that are the data that you report. You don't add in any of your own opinion. You don't color it in any way. That is that person's job. So that person, the color analyst, does the why. So if you think about, say, a football game, and the running back gets 4 yards, and I say he gets 4 yards, he's averaging 8 yards a carry. So that play was a great play by the defensive guy who made the stop, let's just say, okay? Then the analyst is going to then say why that play happened the way it did. Maybe he read the play right. Maybe there was a missed block. Maybe the running back slipped and fell. But he's going to be able to say those kinds of things as to why. So it's really important to also understand play-by-play is the black and white, the who, what, when, and where. The color analyst is the why. Back to you, Curt Sandoval.
Thank you, Dave Caldwell. That was great stuff. And what I'd like to really remind our audience, if you hear both of us kind of saying the same thing, put a couple exclamation points behind it on your notes. What Dave just explained about Vin Scully, I can tell you honestly, I will humbly say this. I've been very blessed to have a long career in this industry. And I will be very honest, and I'm not saying this to be really nice. I really believe it. I don't consider myself a very good anchor. I don't have that skill set. My skill set, probably I should have went into math and science. That's my skill set. But I enjoy storytelling. Now that I believe I have a stronger skill set. So when I anchor, and I really mean this, and we have the #1 weather guy, maybe in the country, but certainly in town. This man is in his mid to late 60s. He rehearses his weathercast to this day in his office, just so he delivers it with such enthusiasm. I have to do the same thing. I am in early in my career at ABC, I would get in kind of these friendly debates, and my producer would say, Curt, don't practice it. Just go out there and be yourself. I can't. I'm not good enough. It doesn't flow. Now I'm not an actor. I'm not, Tom Cruise, for God's sakes. I don't rehearse lines, but I need to speak confidently and fluently. So I got to practice it. And no exaggeration. Last night I'm anchoring. I had to reread my scripts out loud 3 to 5 times. And when I get distracted, then it's not a very good show. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about that Dave and I have both mentioned a couple of times, and I feel this is very specific to where you guys are as the next young journalists coming up. We are living in a digital revolution. And you see the new commercial for the iPhone 47, whatever it is. I think it's 12. If you have the iPhone 47, I think it's 12. There's a thing where you can shoot in 4K. Now that's insane of how high that is. But let's just talk for a little bit about shooting with your iPhone. So what's the problem with shooting with your iPhone? At Masters University, they actually have a class called Pocket Studio. And at Michigan State, a colleague of ours who is, no exaggeration, who's won 27 Emmys, who's won the Edward R. Murrow Award 3 times, who's won the Tegna Innovator of the Year. Tegna is a big television station group. He teaches a class at Michigan State, shooting with your iPhone. A couple of summers ago, I shadowed him just to kind of learn for me. And I want you guys to write this down, Beast Grip. So when we're done, Google Beast Grip. What's the problem with shooting with your iPhone? Well, there's two things. It's usually unstable, and usually the audio stinks. And that's the first thing this gentleman, Mike Castellucci, you can Google him, Mike Castellucci. Google Mike Castellucci Buffalo and watch that story that he shot with his iPhone. The storytelling is magnificent. The audio is magnificent. But my point being is, when you look at that story or any story that's on Mike Castellucci's reel, everything is shot with his iPhone. And this Beast Grip is something that locks into a tripod that holds your iPhone that has a 16:9 lens in front of it. So now you just turned your high-end, everybody's got a phone. Now you have a phone that's every bit as good as what we use at ABC7. Right now, because of the pandemic, I have not anchored in the studio since March. I anchor all my weekend shows from my house. You know what I use, you guys? My iPhone. It's good enough for broadcast quality. I have a specific mic. When you go to Beast Grip, you will see all the audio, and it's as clear as a whistle. I brought one, okay? Lavalier mic, right here. We've all seen that, okay? That just from the lavalier like to right there, plug that into the iPhone, and you have clean as a whistle audio. Beast Grip they have a shotgun mic that holds it. You guys, you can shoot great things. Now, just because you have a Beast Grip and just because you have a good audio, that doesn't mean you're a good storyteller. You need to learn the other elements of good storytelling. One of the things I tell my students is, God bless my Aunt Shirley, but don't shoot like my Aunt Shirley, okay? That is one of the most important rules. What I mean by that, if it was a camera, my Aunt Shirley would just get everybody huddled around and put that camera right on her shoulder. She's not going to get any shots. She's not going to get this shot, okay? Sorry, you got them in a pair of shorts. She's not going to get that shot, okay? So don't shoot like Aunt Shirley. Shoot like a storyteller. Mike Castellucci, Castellucci, Mike Castellucci, write it down. Google Mike Castellucci phoning it in. He's won Edward R. Murrow Awards for a 30-minute show that every single thing is shot on his iPhone. Study that. I do the Sean McVay show. Sean McVay is the coach of the Rams. You know what? Sean McVay is a brilliant coach because he studies film. He studies the good. He's humble. That's what you guys need to do. Study the great storytellers. To be honest, because of ABC, you can look me up at some of my stories on ABC's website. You're not going to find much on YouTube because I have a clause in my contract. I'm not supposed to put that content on YouTube. But study Mike Castellucci. You know, and this is the type of stuff that I really want you guys to go, okay, I can shoot with an SLR camera, a Canon D5, which has great pictures, but the Canon D5 is hard to follow sports. A regular camera would be better because it can follow it. That's the whole thing that I'm trying to teach. Storytelling, to what Dave said, again, 3 exclamation points. It's not just the pictures. It's not just you. The audio is every bit as important in your timeline. Knowing how to dissolve your audio, not just hard cut. One of the best things that was taught to me 30 years ago, and it's still completely appropriate today, is know the difference between editing and cutting. We cut the highlights. If we're doing the golf, cut, 5 to 7 highlights. Editing is, man, now the clay is on the spin wheel and we're molding it together and we're sequencing things. I'm going to give you guys one other thing to watch, and Google the name Davis Yates. Davis Yates, I think it's called 570. Davis Yates 570. Davis Yates is closer to your age than mine. He's 20 years old, you guys. And it might be Davis Yates 530, 570. Forgive me, you'll find it. He is a young journalist in Colorado who did a feature story on a gentleman who had just retired riding his bike 570 miles across the Colorado Trail on a mountain bike. Studied the camera angles. He did not use a GoPro on a mountain bike trail for 570 miles. He used a drone and he used his SLR camera. But the editing sequence and the audio sound and using Google Map editing, it's brilliant. He's only probably a couple years older than most of you, a few years older. That's great things to study. So storytelling, think about the mechanics of storytelling. Dave, I think you, with your background, you should really talk now about writing and write and rewrite.
You know, yeah, you actually, that's exactly where I was thinking about going from here. Part of my background that I kind of glossed over a little bit before '97, when I got back into television production, I was a sitcom writer. I was here in Hollywood and writing sitcoms, and so I did a lot of studying of what makes a good story and drama. Sitcom writing, it's not just jokes, but there's a lot of stories that are involved with it as well. And so writing is huge. And when it comes to even play-by-play, again, kind of focusing on, I'm getting a feedback here. Yeah. Curt and I are actually in the same house. So he just came down to get a cup of coffee. He's looking in the refrigerator. This is really good TV right here. Whatever he says, believe him. Anyway, so when it comes to play-by-play, again, the research, that bottom 90% of the iceberg, I'm writing the opening almost every single time. There's also going to be elements as a game goes on where I'm going to be taking notes about other parts that are extremely important. But writing, and part of my story as well, in my background is, in addition to writing sitcoms, I too have been a sports anchor, news anchor, morning show host. Writing is huge, and you have to be able to understand that. You need to be able to get to what is the emotional core. I like to tell students all the time, find the emotional core of a story. That's when you're going to get it really well. When Curt just talked about Davis Yates and that journey of that man on his bike riding the trail in Colorado, there's probably one question that he asked himself, Davis Yates did, asked himself and asked others during this process of doing this story. Why? Why is a huge, huge question. Don't just say what. He's riding his bike on a trail. Where? Colorado. Who? You give him his name. Okay, those are simple things. But why? That is an essential part of any story. And just as I was talking before about how a play-by-play guy is the black and white and the analyst is the color, the analyst handles the why. You have to have the why in order to fully appreciate what it is you're watching or the story that is being told, whether it's being told in real time or that it is being told through an edited piece. Curt, you tell me, and then Grant, I think maybe what we should do, because we've only got about 5 minutes, Curt, you tell me about what is so important about writing that you find, and then maybe we should open it up to questions for the group, because we have to be out in about 20 minutes.
Yep, perfect, Dave. And I was going to say the why. And my other thing, you guys, is it's really 3 things. I tell my students 3 key components. Why? Remember that you are in the mass media. So somewhere today, a guy's going to get bit by a dog, and unless he gets mauled, that's happens all the time. So dog biting man is not a story. Now, if the man bit the dog, now that's a story. So the unique. So your why is powerful. Your unique is powerful. And the third, and I think right there with the why is, and Dave's already mentioned it, the emotion. Right. I mean, literally go to the dictionary and look at list of emotions: happy, sad, anger, all these things. Think about a movie like Forrest Gump. Think about your favorite movie right now in your head. Why is it your favorite movie? It probably provokes some type of emotion. In Dave and our time frame, Field of Dreams, this at the end of the movie, Kevin Costner playing catch with his dad. Why, you're going to cry. Yeah, no, I'm not crying. You're crying. Exactly. Why is it such a good movie? It hits all the emotions. Why did Forrest Gump win all the happy, sad, all the emotions? Use emotion.
Grant, I'm going to throw it back over to you. I will say this, though. I do see in the chat that we do have a question from David Brahman. I hope I'm saying it right, David. David Brahman. He says, I love play-by-play. I love sports, and I love to talk, so it's perfect. Right now, I love to narrate my sports video games and mute games on TV and narrate them. This is fun for now, but what can I do to practice to really get better at play-by-play? I think you're doing the right thing. And here's one thing that I would suggest that you do. Record yourself doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And then play it back several days later, because then you can be a little bit more objective about what it is that you are listening to. Are you getting, at that point, you would then be a listener. Are you getting from what you're being told everything you need to know to feel, there's that emotion, feel the excitement of what is being conveyed? If not, what more can you do? The second thing I would suggest, and Curt touched on it as well, when you are studying to do what we do, you need to study and learn from the best. You need to listen to the best. You need to, if you're going to be a storyteller, Curt, look, first of all, Curt says he's not a very good anchor. Curt's a great anchor. He's won 7 Emmys. He knows how to tell a story. Trust me, he is a great anchor. He's being very modest about this and humble, but he is a great anchor and knows how to provide that emotion. But if you want to do play-by-play, I suggest learning from someone like Al Michaels. Al Michaels, he is great. He was one of my mentors. He is someone who goes beyond just telling you what you're seeing. He does such a great job at that. And he also works extremely well with Chris Collinsworth, because that is a relationship that you have to have. You talk about chemistry all the time when you have any kind of partnership, whether you've got a boyfriend or a girlfriend, whether it's someone you're working with, that chemistry has to be critical as well. So David, thank you for the question. It's a great question. I suggest at this point, record yourself and then play it back a few days later when you have removed yourself from what you've already seen. And also then record and look at, clearly break it down, what makes a great play-by-play guy or girl so good, and try to break that down yourself.
All right. We have a question from Landon Miller. In your opinion, this is probably for either Dave or Curt, in your opinion, why is sportscasting special compared to the basic news?
Oh, I'll tell you, because it's the candy store of the newsroom. Sports, listen, I'm a sports guy, and if they had cutbacks and they said, hey, we're not going to do sports anymore, I would go work for UPS. I really would. Sports to me, and this is really important for all you, follow your heart. I'm a Christian man, and I always tell my Christian students, God's not going to lead you down the wrong path. Follow your heart. So what makes sports so unique is sports is not going away. What's happening is, in the world we live in, where it's the Netflix, people are cutting the cord. You can just watch whatever you want and for how long you want. Sports is as big as ever. What's going away is the time frame on local sports is going away. And you guys, I'm telling you, since the first of the year, every time I do a story, I did a story on Dave Roberts. He's the manager of the Dodgers. They just won the World Series, but it was about Martin Luther King. It 90 seconds on TV. That 7-minute interview turned into a 6-minute feature story for our app. And I just, Justin Herbert, Chargers, Rookie of the Year quarterback, did a 10-minute interview, minute and a half, went on TV, 7 minutes, went on our app. It's a great time because television stations have apps to be a storyteller. I don't know if I'm answering your question. What makes sports unique is, I'll sum it up this way. Reality TV shows do really well on network television, reality TV shows. Sports is a reality TV show. Oh. Similar to what Dave said, there, two sides, Dave's background in writing and the two guys looking for the girl. This is the two teams looking for the win. It's reality TV. It's unpredictable. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best there is. And I'll just add one quick thing to that, Grant, before getting to the next question. If you love sports, that's going to be a big key for that. If you love news, and you can tell, maybe you love politics, follow just like what Curt was saying, follow your heart. If you are all in, then you need to do everything you can, no matter what that is, to be all in. I'll give you one quick story. Both Curt and I have had interns over the years, many times. I had an intern, his name was Nick. I won't give you his last name yet, but maybe. Nick, all Nick wanted to do was be a cameraman, and specifically a sports cameraman. He would come to the station, he would volunteer, he would stay late, he would constantly go to me, our production manager, other producers, and say, can I do anything for you? Can I do it? He immersed himself into what he loved. One time I actually said, I want you to go do the story. I want you to shoot it, but I want you to write it, and I want you to do a stand-up. In other words, get in front of the camera and do the stand-up. He took the camera, he went away. 5 minutes later, he came back and he said, I am really uncomfortable. All I want to do is shoot. He knew his lane. He knew what he wanted to do. That was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. Today, Nick has worked at some of the top stations in our country. He's down in Miami right now. He has covered the Pope. He has covered hurricanes. He has won Emmys. He has done everything he can because he knew what he wanted and he immersed himself into it. So if you love sports, get yourself immersed into it. Learn how to be able to do it, everything you can. Grant, what's our next question?
All right, so we got about 12 minutes left, so we've got some more questions. One is from Michael. Michael, I hope I'm pronouncing this correct. Basista, and his question is I've always wanted to know what you do when you have to sneeze or cough while you're on air, or if you make a mistake about the play.
All right, well,
go ahead.
Let me jump in real quick because it's actually real easy. When you're doing play-by-play, the game is on. We have our headsets. We're up in the press box. We have what's called a cough box or cough button. We have these buttons, and each of us have. We can either push a button and talk to the producer that's down in the truck, or we can push a button and cough and sneeze and make all kinds of noise, and no one would ever know the difference. That's easy for me.
So in mine, because I'm usually only on, in 2 to 3 minute windows, usually you can feel it coming and you can suppress it, but it's happened before. And so if this is the mic and it's clipped on your lapel and you got to sneeze, you cover it and you turn your head. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But you never do it on camera. It's always under the VO. In terms of making a mistake, let me just tell you this, happens all the time. And if it's a mistake that I know right then that I said it, I correct it. Yeah. If the second part is, if it's a mispronunciation, I I usually, if I mispronounced it, I usually don't know that I mispronounced it. So for example, this weekend, whoever Novak Djokovic was playing, neither me or my producer knew how to say it. So I go to YouTube and I type in his name on YouTube and then I say pronunciation. And then YouTube has a pronunciation thing for all athletes and they say it. So I phonetically spell it out. There's a young man at UCLA whose name is really unique, who I have to phonetically, and I got to tell my brain, slow down. Now, the other part of the mistake that's really important, be humble. You're going to make mistakes, and the Twitter universe is a real mean place. So when they call you out, don't fight with them. Just, hey, my bad. Thanks for pointing that out. I'll be better next time. Move along. And our news director points this out. Twitter just kind of seems to organically go away. So if you make a mistake and it's an honest mistake, own it, own it. I'll be better next time. Drop it. It's off the cliff. It's off the cliff. Don't keep battling with people. And that's not just in this industry. That's a good recommendation in life. Just own it, move on.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Our next question is from Laura Blanco. Laura says, hello, I'm a senior from Miami, Florida, and I wanted to ask what classes or opportunities you had in college that helped you become, both of you become so successful, and thanks for all the great advice so far.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I think education broadly is really critical. You know, I studied at Colorado State radio and television, but it was a speech communication degree with the emphasis on radio and television. What does that mean? That means that I had a liberal arts education. I studied philosophy, psychology, sociology. I had all of those different kinds of classes. Rhetoric and Western thought. I'll never forget that class. Oh my goodness gracious. But the point being, both Curt and I think I can safely say this. We both are fairly intelligent people who know how to think and think critically and think creatively. And there isn't necessarily a class that is going to, there may be a class that is going to teach you what it takes to be a sports anchor. That is a possibility. But that's not the end all. And if you have a broader background and you can sincerely study to become a better educated person, read and read and read and read. I mean, Curt and I were talking before we came on here. I read all the time, and I'm not just talking about sports books. I'll be honest. Right now, I'm in the middle of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I love to read Shakespeare sometimes. It's just a matter of being able to broaden out your mind so that, for me anyway, the use of language at the appropriate moment, the appropriate word, the best thing that you can say at that moment, that's huge. If you can do that, that is a critical thing. So for me, it's a great question. It really is. There's no single class or group of classes that are going to get you to where Curt and I have been able to get to in our 30 to 40 years of a career. As broad as possible would be my recommendation.
And I honestly think this is probably the most important question for this age demographic for this class. Love this question. Let me give you my heart and soul really quick. Buddy of mine here in town is a commercial real estate agent. He's in his early 60s. He says it best. You guys want to know exactly where you're going to be 5 years from now? I can tell you exactly where you're going to be in 5 years. It will depend on the books you read and the people you hang out with in those 5 years. So what does that mean specifically? Here would be my recommendation. Take a business class as part of your general studies, because you're going to work for somebody. And the more you know about business, and with the evolution of the internet, it's good to know business. 100% take as many writing classes as you can. Journalism 101, communications, the best journalistic class I took was creative writing. That really, really was good. And if you don't have this, I want to know. That's why Dave reads. I mean, the other reason Dave reads is because at Colorado State, when he went there, the T-Rex had just died and there weren't books around.
There we go.
That's a separate
There we
story.
go.
Okay, all kidding aside, reading is expanding the mind. For me, I'm not a sit on the sofa kind of guy. I'm a get out on my bike for an hour kind of guy. And if I'm going to sit on the sofa and watch a movie, it's going to be a documentary about something I didn't know. And that's just because I'm inquisitive. And because I've been so much into sports, I just recently watched the documentary on Queen. I didn't know all this stuff about this dude. It was fascinating. There's a lot of things I don't know in politics because I'm so into sports. So to answer your question, when you go to college, take a business class, take classes that challenge you. You're going to have to do your general ed of math and all these things. If you're good in math, don't just take the class to get an A. Push yourself. Do statistics. Do things that are going to enhance you. But also remember, the last part of this for me is college is, and my son is going to college next year. We're having these discussions right now. College is he's a senior in high school. College is so much more than just your GPA. College is about learning to be an adult. The 18-year-old mind is not fully developed until you're 22, 23 years old. So go learn, soak it up. Learn what it's like to have an 8 a.m. class when you're out, hanging with your buddies, on Wednesday night until midnight, and you got to walk a half mile to campus. Learn, be elite. I love that, really passionate about that.
Yeah.
All right. And then for our final question, this is actually a Santa Clarita-based question. Dylan Zampern says, I do a sports segment for my middle school, and I want to do a special segment with Trevor Bauer because he went to my middle school, and now he's on the Dodgers. How do you think I should go about getting him to do that segment with me?
Well, Curt, that's probably the best one for you. I think to be able to reach out to the Dodgers media department to help you with that. There's also someone locally that Curt and I both know. His name is Jim Wagner. You're thinking of too?
Yeah. Here's what you do. You Throw Zone Academy. It's kind of off Soledad over by Home Depot out in the Canyon Country area. Look up Throw Zone Academy. Even if you have to cold call and knock on the door, Trevor Bauer's dad works for Jim Wagner. So go in there and humble yourself. And I don't know that you're going to get Trevor Bauer, but you just might. And welcome to being a journalist. You get told no a lot, but yeah, I love it. And maybe you don't get Trevor Bauer, but maybe you get Trevor Bauer's dad. Maybe you go over to Hart High School and you find out his high school baseball coach. And there's a shot at Hart High School of his name on the board. And you talk to everybody who knew Trevor Bauer. And you go about, but Throw Zone Jim Wagner.
Yep. And Jim Ozella, by the way, is the head coach at Hart High School. And a little tidbit that's kind of fun to know, because again, the more you dig, the more you find out. Trevor Bauer was on the mound when the Cleveland Indians lost to the Chicago Cubs in the World Series. Well, who was on the mound for the Cubs at the moment when the Cubs clinched that World Series championship? A man by the name of Mike Montgomery. Well, guess what? Mike Montgomery and Trevor Bauer were both the high school starting pitchers at Hart High School in 2008. So when you dig deeper and you start to find out these little things, here's this big moment in sports history. The Cubs beat the Indians, who were the two pitchers of record in that Game 7 win. At that moment were two guys who were high school teammates and the starting pitchers at Hart High School. So dig. You'll find gems that make people go, wow, that is awesome. Wow, I did not know that.
That right there, friends, is tell them what you don't know. That is man bites dog. That's great, Dave.
I just want to thank both.
You made me drink coffee.
I just want to thank both Dave Caldwell and Curt Sandoval for their time. Thank you both for joining us and sharing your views with our students from around the country. And we hope to see you.
Hey guys, and if you don't mind, I just want to tell them at ABC7 Curt. Curt is with a C. You guys have a question, just instant message me on Instagram or Twitter, or you can on my Facebook. It's all the same, at ABC Curt.
And that's a great idea. My Twitter is at Dave Caldwell SCV, like Sierra Charlie Victor. Dave Caldwell SCV. Same thing. If you have any more questions, be more than happy to answer them. I really enjoyed my time. Thank you, Grant, for inviting us and being a part of this.
Yeah,
we really
thanks,
appreciate
Grant.
it. And thank all of you who from around the country that are participating in this. Good luck to all of you. And if Curt and I can help you in any way, we'll be there for you.
Thank you, folks.